Welcome to Plot Twist Radio, the show where creativity, storytelling, and the unpredictable path of the creative life all collide. I'm your host, Erin Egnatz. Some stories are written on paper, and some are lived, mile by mile, across thousands of miles of open road. Today's guest didn't just find her voice, she fought for it. After years of silence, self-doubt, and survival, she made a choice that would change everything. She got on a bicycle and rode across the United States. But this isn't just a story about endurance. It's about rediscovery, about resilience, and about what happens when you finally decide your story deserves to be told. Teri M. Brown is an author, speaker, and storyteller whose work blends history, heart, and deeply human experiences. From powerful novels rooted in resilience to her transformative journey captured in 10 Little Rules of a Double-Butted Adventure, her stories remind us that it's never too late to rewrite your life. In this episode, we talk about healing through storytelling, the courage to begin again, and why sometimes the most important journeys don't start with a plan. They start with a single, uncertain step. Hello, Teri, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, Erin.
It's great to have you. Before we get going, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Oh, so yeah, like how long do you have? No, I'm an author, I'm a podcast host, I'm a public speaker, but I always tell people I'm also so many other things. I'm a grandma, I'm a mom, I love to play bridge, I walk on the beach. I just have a lot of things that really interest me, but authoring and writing and all things writerly really send me over the edge. I mean, those are the things I love the most.
Gotcha. I love that. So you like to walk on the beach. I just got back from the beach and I
Yes.
miss it so much.
So I live 8 miles from the Atlantic, and I walk on it most mornings. This morning is not one of those mornings because it's cold, but most mornings I like to go out and walk.
Oh, I love it. I told my husband when we were down there, I was like, you know what? I'm moving here because I live up in
Yes.
Chicago and it's cold and I
Oh,
don't like it.
yes. No, I can imagine. So where were you at the beach?
We were in Fort Lauderdale, but you
Okay,
told
yeah,
me you were in North Carolina,
I
right?
am. I'm on the coast of North Carolina. It's beautiful here.
It
Yeah.
is. It is. For my other job, which a lot of people on here know me about, is a ghost hunter. And I went down to, I think it was the Battleship, North Carolina, in
Yes.
Wilmington. I
That that's
enjoyed it.
about that's about an hour from where I live. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So, yeah, it's beautiful there, isn't it?
It is. It's a great area. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm very jealous. So, getting back to you, what first drew you to storytelling in the beginning?
I think that I've always been a storyteller. I've been telling stories since I was a little girl. I said I wanted to be an author when I was a little girl. However, I also said I wanted to be a heart surgeon and I don't like the sight of blood. So I don't think I really knew, but I loved books. And I love the art of storytelling. And I like oral storytelling. I love to go to events where you can listen to people tell stories. I There's just something really magical about falling into someone else's world, and I like to become the character and experience all the things that the characters are experiencing. Then I started writing for small businesses when my kids were little. I was a homeschool mom and I needed an income. The internet was new. All of these businesses were putting their stuff out on the internet and they were doing a poor job of it because they didn't know what they were doing. And I thought I can help them make their websites look better or their little promotional pamphlets and things. So I started working for small businesses, and all that time I kept thinking, "I wanna be an author. I wanna be an author." Unfortunately, I was in an emotionally abusive relationship for 14 years, and there was no way I was going to put myself out there. When you're writing nonfiction, you're not really putting yourself out there, at least if you're not doing, like, creative nonfiction or something, but if it's just, 10 ways to, sell real estate, then it's not anything that is you. When I got out of that relationship, I started writing. But I was still terrified. I wasn't gonna show it to anyone. I didn't believe in myself. I met Bruce, who became my husband. He and I rode across the United States on a tandem bicycle. So we went 3,102 miles from the coast of Oregon to Washington, D.C. And at the end of that trip, me, who had not been on a bicycle in 40 years when I met him, said, "I can do anything. I mean, I just rode across the United States. What do I want?" And the answer was, I want to write. I want to write. I want to be an author. I want to take these manuscripts that I've been writing and turn them into books. And 14 months later, my first novel came out.
That's incredible. That's an incredible story. So for you, do you feel, and I think I already know the answer to this, that writing's therapeutic? Because for me, it's very therapeutic. Even if it's fantasy and I'm not technically the character, I escape into that world and it becomes
Yes.
very therapeutic for me.
I think it is very therapeutic. I think it's a good way to explore emotions, to explore feelings, to try to explore the what ifs. I have this tendency, I'm a what ifer, and I can sometimes what if myself into a corner that gets very scary. But if you put it down on paper and then you can what if it out there and characters can take care of it, and it does kind of like help you get rid of all of those crazy questions that fly around in your head. And I think for me, it actually was therapeutic also in the way that I felt that I was a good storyteller, but I didn't have anyone telling me so. And now that I have the books out, and when someone says to me, "Oh, I read your book and I loved it," it kind of validates who I am on the inside.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel the exact same way. So your novel spans some really emotional and historical terrain. Um, what draws you to historical fiction?
I think I started with historical. I tell people really what I am is character driven fiction. I love a good character. But when I first started writing, and I'm getting better now, but I'm not super good at setting. Setting is something that I think partially because a lot of books, when I first started really reading, they were the classics where you had to read 4 pages about the flocked wallpaper. And I didn't like it. I would skip until I got to the character. I wanted to know, what are the characters doing? I could care if the wallpaper was green, blue, flock, didn't matter to me. So when it came time for me to write my own books, my setting was flat. I didn't know what to do with it. And so historical kind of gave me the setting. So it was a matter of, can I research the pieces that I need? And I love to research. So it kind of married the the research portion that I love and the writing portion I love. I've since gotten better at the setting. I now know how much is necessary, that I don't have to save 4 pages of the wallpaper in order to get the point across. But I think that's why I started there, was that was part of it. And then the other part is my characters tell me where they need to be. If I have a character in my head, I just wrote one that will be coming out real soon, and it is contemporary. So it is not, but this character could not be in the past. She wasn't the kind of character that could have been in the 1800s. So, my characters really dictate a lot of where I'm going to.
Gotcha. That's actually a good point because you don't realize it when you start in writing how hard it is to do the setting or what the person was wearing or whatever. I know that that was something hard for me. It was describing like the character's looks. I would say
Right.
she had like brown hair, but I didn't realize how much some people really wanted to know what this person looks like.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
yeah, that's
And
really
and for and for
complicated.
and for me, it's like, well, she's your imagination. What do you want her to look like? That's what she looks like. It's fine. Like, I was so my editor with my very first novel, when I sent it to her, she came back gently and let me know that we needed more about what people looked like, where they were, what did her apartment look like, those kinds of things. And I thought, why? Who cares? So I listened to my editor because I think that's a good thing to do, and I added those things in. And the second book, she told me the same thing, and by the third book, I didn't get as much of that feedback because I was starting to recognize as I was writing, "Oh, I bet this would be a good place to do a little bit of setting," and then I would do that, but it doesn't come naturally for me.
Yeah, me either. That is hard because I'm like you. I'm wanting to imagine my own, I guess my own
Yes.
self in there.
Yeah, yes, yeah, that's like, well, if she's got brown hair and brown eyes and I'm blonde-haired and blue-eyed, well, now I can't be that character, and so I often it's funny when I'm reading a book, at the end, if you ask me what the character looks like, I can't remember because that part didn't matter to me, and she's me anyway, and so it's like, well, she looks just like me,
Exactly. Yes.
So
It's good to see a fellow I guess dreamer in there. I don't know.
yes, I don't know what it is, but I think it's really hard to become a character if you can't see yourself in it, and so for me, it's just easier to ignore, "Oh, she was petite." Well, I've never been a petite a day in my life, and so, I don't think of her as that way, and sometimes I'll be reading and the petite comes in, and it'll almost be like, "Oh, that's right, she is tiny."
Love that. So, across all your books, your stories seem rooted in resilience, courage, and identity. Are those themes you consciously write towards, or do they naturally rise to the surface?
I think they naturally rise to the surface, and I suspect a lot of that comes from the fact that I spent 14 years in that emotionally abusive relationship, and I'm not the only person that that's happened to, and I know there are a lot of women out there who wonder about, like, what's coming next in their life. You know, even if they've had a decent life, you get to a certain point and you look back and you think, like, "What else is there?" And the idea of having these strong women characters who find a way up and beyond, and they don't even have to be doing anything, superhuman. Sometimes it's just figuring out how to live again.
Mm.
You know, when something horrible has happened to you, how do you now pick up the pieces and find a way to move forward? And I just love stories where we have women who have the strength and the resilience and just the grit to say, this isn't going to knock me down. So I think a lot of that does come from just my own personal experience. And then I want to pass that on to people because I know that there are people struggling with it. And so if you can read a book and you can find a character and you can say, oh, maybe there is life on the other side of this thing that has me down. That, isn't that perfect? That would be wonderful for me to be able to do that for someone.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, let's talk about writing process a little bit. Are you kind of an outliner or are you kind of like me and a pantser and we just see
I
what
am
happens?
I am such a pantser that it's probably scary. I've tried outlining and it does not work for me. My characters line up against the wall, tap their feet, and wait for that little experiment to be over. They just refuse to participate. I think that my intellectual me is so I'm very rigid. In my real life, I have lists, I know what I'm doing every day, I like things to be just so, and my writing life is 1,000% opposite. Like, I am free for all, what comes what may. I don't even write every day. I write when the mood hits me, and then I might write for 14 hours that day because the mood hit me. I'm a binge writer. I would not recommend what I do to anyone, but it is what works for me, and I think it's because it is so polar opposite of the me, the me that runs my world, and the me that runs my world is not a great storyteller. I'm too rigid. I know what needs to come next, and I don't allow it to come. I force it. And so the writing me is just let's just write and see what happens. I have to put the Terry you're speaking to now has to leave the room for me to write.
I love the way you say that because that sounds exactly like me because I will sit down, I will write, and, I'll come back up for air in like 16 hours. Like,
Yes.
what am I
What
doing?
happened? Yeah, whoa, where am I? And when I'm done writing that whatever stint that was, I really don't have anything else to say. And it might be several days before I have anything else to say it again, it's not that I'm not thinking about it. And sometimes I'm trying scenarios in my head, I'm not even really aware I'm doing it. I'm washing the dishes and I realize I'm thinking about the next scene. And then it'll be like, "Yeah, that's not gonna work." And, I'm doing things and all of a sudden it'll be like and I sit down and I write again. So, I would not recommend my method. I don't think it's probably very it's just not it's not one that you can write a book on and say, "This is the method that Terry M. Brown uses." I mean, it's just not no, it's
Right,
not
yeah.
pretty. Yeah.
It's not, but you're not the only one.
That's good to know.
It's nice to know that there's a kindred spirit out there. Usually when I ask people, even if they're, the pantsers, they have like a set time and it's gonna be like this and this, and I'm like, "Oh man, I must be like
No.
80 or something."
No, I really I don't understand my method or why it works for me. I do know that I have tried other things because people tell me, "Oh, you would be so much more efficient if you could do," and so I've tried very loose plotting. I have tried sitting down at my computer every day for 2 hours. I throw everything away that's written, and I do not have 2 hours every day to throw away everything that I write. So, I just go back to my method.
Yep, and it seems to work, so
And
there you
it's
go.
working, so I wouldn't recommend it. So anyone listening, I would not try this method just because, but it does work for me.
For sure. So, what is your favorite part of the writing process?
I really like the messy first draft because I enjoy seeing what's gonna come out on the page. I'm as surprised as anyone reading the real book the first time. because I don't know what's coming next. And as it's coming up and these new things pop up, I'm as excited as if I'm reading a book. Like it is like, oh wow, look at what's happening next. So I really love that. I also, though I don't in it's hard for me, the editing. I like the final edits when I have gotten it to my developmental editor and she has said, "Here are some holes that I see." I like fixing those and seeing what happens to the story at that point because she does things for me that I can't do for myself. You
Mhm.
know, I don't see it. If I saw it, I would have fixed it on my own. And so she'll point something out and then I sit with it for a while and I think, well, how can I do that so that people aren't feeling the wrong way about the character or who can see the arc of this character or and then I go and fix it. And I love seeing that finished product then and say, "Oh, that's it. That's really what I was trying to do." So, I kind of the very first of the stuff and then the very end of it. And then,
Mhm.
of course, who doesn't love getting their book in the mail for the first time?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I cry every time. I have yet to not cry.
Really.
My gosh, it's my book. Yeah, I don't know. So, I hope I do that for the rest of my life.
Absolutely. That shows that you have so much passion for what you do.
Yeah.
It's a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, and I love it. I love being an author. I am so grateful that at this point in my life that I finally said yes to that piece of me. And, people ask me, "Well, how long do you think you'll write?" And I say, "I hope until the day I die." Like, I hope on my deathbed, I am croaking out the last 2 sentences of the last manuscript that, like, "Let's do it." I don't know, that's just I love it. I wanna keep doing this.
I love that. So I have to ask about the title of your book, Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure. Where did that
Yes.
come from?
So I wrote a blog the whole way across the United States, and I called us Double Butted Adventures because 2 butts, 1 bike, off we go on an adventure. And then I got involved with a publishing company called 10 Little Rules, and I had written I called them guides or ideas or lessons, and I had written and then I hadn't done anything with it. So I had written my blog, then I came home, I realized I learned all these life lessons. I wrote down a lot. I kind of had a very rough first draft of this and then did nothing with it, didn't really know where to go with it. Met Carol from 10 Little Rules Publishing. She read it. So 10 Little Rules for Double Butted Adventure was just exactly what it is. And it is about my bicycle trip, but it's more about lessons I learned about life while on a bicycle trip. And so you don't have to be a cyclist to say, oh, this is the book I want to read. What you have to be is someone who feels a little stuck, who says, I want to be more adventurous in my life. And adventurous can be something like moving to a new city or changing jobs or deciding you want to learn to watercolor. I mean, it doesn't have to be riding a bicycle. And then it's lessons that I learned, what happens to you and what you can do to be more adventurous.
Yeah. I so the book is much more about cycling, as you just pointed out. At what point did you realize that this trip was becoming a deeper personal story?
I don't think I realized it while I was riding because when you're riding, it's hard. It was a very difficult thing for me. I'm not an athlete. I am not a cyclist by trade in any stretch. When I met Bruce, I hadn't been on a bicycle in 40 years, and so this was huge for me. And so each day you rode each day. I mean, that's what it was. At the end of the ride, now we've made it, and I'm having trouble putting it all together into one event because we rode Tuesday, and then we put Tuesday away, and we rode Wednesday, and we put Wednesday away, and it was like, I know I wrote it, but I couldn't put it together. So I started reading my blog, thinking if I read my blog, I could see the trip as a whole instead of these individual days. And while I was reading my blog, I started noting these lessons that I was learning, and I began jotting them down. And after I had like 3 or 4 that I saw immediately, it was, you know what? This could be a book. And this I knew that the journey had changed me on the last day when I realized I wanted to be an author and I had the guts to do it now. But I realized that the journey also could help other people about 2 or 3 weeks later as I'm reading this blog going. But even though I realized that in 2020, this book didn't come out until 2025. And Partially, it's I wrote it and then I didn't know where to go with it. I didn't wanna self-publish it. I didn't know where to put it, and so it just kind of sat there waiting for a home. And then I met Carol from 10 Little Rules Publishing, and it was like, "That's the home. That's the home." And so it worked out really well for me.
That's brilliant. It's always great when you find that publisher or, editor or whoever it is that you just mesh with so well.
Yes. Yeah, and you know this is where this book belongs. And so 10 Little Rules Publishing has a lot of 10 Little Rules for books. And it's, different people from different walks of life who have these 10 rules for even like finding a new job or changing, these kinds of things. But it was like she knows how to help me market toward the kind of audience that's going to read a book like this.
Mhm.
And so it was perfect. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So when readers pick up a Terry M. Brown book, what do you hope they come away feeling?
I hope they come away feeling like they really know a character. That this is a character that they wish they could invite to lunch. Like, this is someone that they would love to sit down with. That's one. I also hope they come away learning something about themselves. In my novels, I'm often talking about, like you said, resilience. I often, though, also will pull in some social issues, racism or xenophobia or, those kinds of issues. Maybe that you can look at things just a little differently than you did when you got started. I want them to have a good experience reading the book, and if that's what you want and you just want a good story, I think that I've got that too. But if you want a little more, I hope that you can walk away with that.
That's wonderful. I love that. So what's next for you?
Well, I have a book coming out in April called Peg Unhinged, and it is about a woman going through menopause, and it is just very funny, tongue in cheek. I'm really excited about it. It's a story that I've had in my head for a long time, and I have finally gotten it out on paper, so that feels good. I'm going to a writing retreat both in April and in July, and during that time, I hope to write at least get out my first draft of my next novel, and it is going to be a dual timeline, so present and historical, and it's about a it's still very vague in my mind. There's something called a kipu, which are like knots that people used to tie to keep count of like how much cattle they had and that kind of thing. But they have since learned that some of those kipu tell actual stories. So I have a woman who finds one and she's trying to figure out the story, but we go back in time and we see the story as it's being written on the kipu.
Really?
But it's very vague in my mind. I know I'm a pantser, so I really don't know what's gonna happen with it.
That's very interesting, though. I've never even heard of that, but now I'm gonna look it up. I'm a historian, so,
Yes.
I
So
have to
so
dive
it
in.
was it was like the Aztec era and people, they kept like macrame knots almost. But for the longest time, we thought that it was just mostly mathematical, things like, how much cattle and what we sold and that kind of thing. And I read an article where it said that they believe that some of them actually tell stories, like historical stories. And that's what just caught my attention because I thought, "Oh my gosh, stories in knots, is that just amazing?" And then, bam, I have this idea of, "Oh, I've got, like, an anthropologist who's looking back and sees it, and somehow I'm gonna have her connected to the story." Like, maybe it's gonna be, like, her ancestor, or I don't know. I have to write it. Yeah, so we'll see what happens with it.
Well, I look forward to that one for sure. So where can the listeners find you?
Best place is my website. So if you go to terrymBrown.com, and that's Terry with one R, I am everywhere. So you can see my social media there. You can buy my books there. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can see my podcast. I even just have a contact me page if you just wanted to reach out and say, hey, I have a quick question for you. So that's the easiest place to find everything. And then from there, you can like go off and do other things.
Perfect. And I will make sure that's in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
There's something powerful about a story that doesn't just entertain, but transforms. And today, Terry reminded us that resilience isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's messy, and sometimes it looks like getting back on the bike and choosing yourself again and again. From surviving to thriving, from silence to storytelling, her journey is proof that it's never too late to reclaim your voice and your life. If this episode resonated with you, Make sure to check out her work, especially 10 Little Rules for a double butted adventure, and connect with her online. You'll find all the links in the show notes. And if you're sitting there wondering if it's your turn to take the leap, this might just be your sign. Until next time, keep chasing the story you were meant to live.